Wow. It's an extreme delight to wish you all a Shana Tova and a Baruchim Ha'Ba'im welcome. It's a delight to see so many of you again, and those that I have not seen in some of you in some 3 years. I could never have dreamt that it would be, that I would yearn, I should say, to actually stand here and shush people. Amazing. What a great feeling it was. So thank you for that. My sermon over the next few minutes was born out of 3 separate incidences that occurred this year. All 3 were separate incidences. They occurred to 3 different people. And unfortunately, their origin came from the same place, where one group in Judaism sought to impose their beliefs on others. And therefore, my discussion this morning is about achdut, it's about unity. As Jews, despite popular misconceptions, we are not a monolithic people. And certainly not in terms of our beliefs and practices. Neither are we the same in our appearance, in our backgrounds, in our observance, in our ancestry. Are we Ashkenazic? Are we Sephardic? Are we Mizrahi? We have actually all 3 on the beamer here. Okay, Ashkenazic, Sephardic, and our Chazin's got Mizrahi background, Bukhari. So, we've got all 3 here. The truth is, though, that it doesn't matter, and nor should it matter, because we are all still Jews. And that is why, no matter our differences, whatever they may be, we need to be welcoming and we need to be supportive of each other. We are a diverse people, and we are in no position to exclude anyone from our community just because they look or act different. And as we begin this new year, it might be a good idea to ask ourselves, what is true achdut? What is unity? And how do we go about achieving it? Rabbi Pinchas Lifshutz offers us this definition. He said, in order to achieve achdut, we need to live for others. We need to become involved with the community, do things that we do not necessarily enjoy, and even perform acts that we may think are beneath us, are below our dignity. The more people need us, the more sunshine and happiness we bring to the world and spread around. And the more reason there is then for God to keep us here. God doesn't keep us here just to take up space. In other words, the challenge of achdut, of unity, is to be able to subordinate our selfish inclinations and to conquer our hubris so that we can work with others for the common good. Achdut means being able to disagree with others without being disagreeable and without resorting to demonizing those who hold differencing of opinions, whether it be in politics or whether it be in religion or whether it be anything else. And when somebody tells you that your rabbi or your chazan is not Jewish enough because they are conservative, you know full well you're speaking to either a fool or somebody who doesn't understand what achdut is all about. Achdut is not only achieved by responding together to common tragedies. You know, it's amazing how in tragedies everybody comes together, everybody's running, busy, they forget what brand of Judaism you're in. But rather, achdut is achieved with real, concrete, long-lasting steps of meaningful togetherness and unity between disparate groups. It is achieved by building bridges of achdut with those both inside and outside our community so that we can work together to slow the rising tide of anti-Semitism and racism and random hatreds, violence created by hatred. True achdut is when we feel that closeness with each other, not just for a moment, Not just whether we're happy or whether we're sad or whether we're good or whether we're bad or euphoric or tragic, but all the time, no matter if things seem calm or not. As part of attempting to achieve this achdut is by not being judgmental, particularly when it comes to your brand of Judaism. Believing that your practice is better than the next person's is a good thought to have on this day of judgment, if that's the way you feel. So I'm going to share with you what happened, what the 3 stories that happened. As I say, 2 of those stories you know the people involved. The third one you don't know, which is the one that's the most painful to me. So I get a call in my office about, 5 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago. Young family in the West Island had a baby boy. They would like me to do the bris for them. We set the date, we set the time. And I asked them where the venue was going to be. And they told me that it was going to be a synagogue in the West Island. And quietly under my breath, I said to myself, good luck to that one, but give me a call. And they called me back a couple of hours later that they'd spoken with the synagogue in the West Island. And they said, yes, we'd love to have the bris here, no problem. But unfortunately, Rabbi Bright's a welcome guest, but he cannot officiate. And they said, why can't he officiate? He's my rabbi. And they said, well, because he's not Orthodox. He's conservative. And we don't allow non-Orthodox rabbis. So the father, who happens to be a lawyer, here he goes, says to him, so what you're telling me is that my rabbi is not Jewish enough to officiate in your synagogue. So the person said, well, I wouldn't quite put it in those terms. He said, well, you did. You did. He said, let me tell you something. If my rabbi is not Jewish enough to officiate in your synagogue, how much more so me and my family are not Jewish enough to be members. So, goodbye. And they put the phone down. Now, I've been in this business a long time. This is not the first time this has happened. And as I always say, I'm old enough and ugly enough to get over this. Doesn't really bother me. But when my chazan tells me that in certain streams of Judaism now, he is not considered a kosher member of a minyan, to be a minyan, because of his belief in Judaism and because he conserves in a conservative arena, that to me is beyond disgusting. But again, it's part of the business that we're in. But the third story is the one that's most painful. It's the most painful to me, to my wife, and to those who have met this individual. And I know this individual is online with us today, so I'm not going to mention the name. But it's a lady who over the last number of years has worked very, very hard, to become a fully fledged member of the children of Israel. And when I say very hard, she's probably one of the fewest people in her community that keeps Shabbat, keeps kosher, taught herself Hebrew, and could probably run circles around most people who were born Jewish. Now, this lady had been giving of herself for the last 10 years to a local Jewish community, an Orthodox Jewish community. And of course, they had no problem to accept her initially, and of course, her checks. But when they found out that she was going through a conservative conversion, they tried everything they could to convince her that she was making the wrong decision. She carried on because she believed, the woman is an academic. She'd done her research. Again, I told you, she's going to be able to run rings around anybody. And she decided that's the route she's taking. And she completed, and she flew into Montreal, and we had the Beit Din here. And she was outstanding. She was outstanding not only in her knowledge, but in her integrity, her honesty, her emotions, her feelings, her beliefs. She went to the mikveh. I was blessed to be present at the first time she got an aliyah to the Torah. And when she said, not only did she do the blessings to the Torah, she did the haftarah on the Shabbat afterwards as a sort of bat mitzvah. Gives you an idea of the caliber of person we're talking about. And when her community, a little community that she'd been helping for years, found out that she had completed a conservative conversion, they literally and figuratively threw her out. Threw her out. Sometimes we think that unity, achdut, only comes when people of such diverse backgrounds come together. But it doesn't have to be like that. Sometimes, if only we were prepared to look, we are more similar than we realize. And if we were to put aside our prejudices, our parochial and territorial ties, and open our eyes, when we do so, we see that our differences are very minor. In fact, they strengthen us because it enables us to learn from each other and thus to better ourselves. And by engaging in outreach, by joining together, we come to see that we have the ability collectively to become greater than the sum of our parts. Now, having said all this, the question I have for you is to consider what type of synagogue, what type of inclusive Judaism we want to have in order to broaden our appeal and achieve true achdut. And make everyone feel welcome, regardless of their belief. Did I turn the chazan down when he wanted to come here and we wanted him because he's a Breslover chassid? Of course not. Did I say we can't have Ariel because he has a Sephardic background? Of course not. It enhances who we are. You know, Jonathan Kolach is the son of a very prominent conservative rabbi. And he had the very same thought because he had to deal with the very same problems that I've spoken to you about so far. And he wrote an article, very interesting article. The article is entitled, "Who is Orthodox, Who is Religious, and Who is Just Observant?" Kolach asks, how do these terms help or hinder our self-definition? How do denominational or religious labels really define who we are as a people and who we are as Jews? Here's a sample of his answer. I think you'll find it really enlightening. He writes, before questioning the usefulness of the word orthodox, let's first acknowledge the need that this term serves. Congregations, like individuals, find benefit in affiliating with congregations of similar direction. Okay, I agree with that, no problem. Such affiliation provides the weight of numbers when larger issues such as intermarriage, conversion, separation of, I would guess we would call it here church and state, recognition of homosexuality as congregants, political positions, national and international issues, they all need to be addressed. So umbrella organizations also facilitate the establishment of religious standards for prayer. Ordination of rabbis, certification of teachers, the streamline of fundraising. So inevitably groups such as the Orthodox Union, the United Synagogue of Conservative Judaism, and the Union of Reform Judaism have come into being. The assumption that all individuals whose congregations are served by one of these umbrella organizations subscribe to the general standards of that organization is utterly false. That said, when used to categorize individuals, the word orthodox and its cognate, religious, its flavor of piety notwithstanding, is often a troublemaker. In the misconceptions it generates, in the provocation and the divisiveness, what does it engender? It engenders one thing and one thing only. What does it say? It says that I am more Jewish than you. That's what it says. It is misleading because it hints at a uniform standard of religious conduct which does not exist. There is no such thing as a uniform standard of orthodoxy. It can be, and it often becomes, the mantra, I am more Jewish than you. Exactly what happened to me, and exactly what happened to the cantor, and exactly what happened to the lady who is with us online. So let's think about this response just for a minute, and I know you're eager to get home for lunch, but bear with me just a second. Let's consider a response to who is Orthodox. How do you know if somebody is Orthodox? Maybe it's the way they dress. Am I Orthodox because I wear a kippah all day? Am I not Orthodox because I don't wear tzitzit all the time? Are my rabbinic colleagues at Chabad Orthodox because they wear a black hat, but my other colleagues elsewhere not, if they don't, or if they wear a different kind of hat? Are the Satmar Hasidim in Utrecht more Orthodox if there is such a word, and I'm just making this up because there isn't such a word, but go work with me for a second, because they wear streimels rather than felt hats? Maybe, I don't know. Is a woman more Orthodox, more religious, more observant because she wears a sheitel or she wears skirts? Does that mean that a woman who wears pants is less religious? By whose standards? By what definition? Who gets to decide and who gets to judge? Is someone more Orthodox or more observant or more religious? Choose whichever word you like, it doesn't really matter. Because they only eat glut meat? The examples go on and on and on. But I'm sure you'll agree that the answers to each and every one of those is an unequivocal no. And here's what Kolach says about it. Understanding the wide variation of Orthodox practice is crucial because the larger Jewish population, not to speak of non-Jews, cannot differentiate between the different shades of orthodoxy. The image that they carry of Orthodox Jews is of the narrow, judgmental, uncompromising, holier-than-thou segment that sees itself as the savior of the Jewish people. And they're not all like that. No one knows what percentage of Orthodox Jews fall into this holier-than-thou category. But unfortunately, they are sufficient to blur the image of observant Jews. And such holier-than-thou will take pains, and I've seen it myself so many times, they'll take pains to go and straighten the tefillin exactly so it's exactly in the middle, claiming that it doesn't meet the hairline criteria. Or we've had people come to our house as guests and go and open our refrigerator to see what my wife has in the refrigerator. Yeah. We had this, they actually looked in the freezer, actually. Just to make sure. Or the person that comes to your house and before, as a visitor, and before Shabbat goes to the refrigerator to make sure that the light bulb is disconnected so it doesn't turn on. Or the person that goes in and wants to know if you've got a kosher mezuzah on your door. All of this, they are boorish, intolerant, and unable to look at you in the eye as equal Jews. Their way is the only way. And as much as we know that this represents only a very small percentage of the so-called Orthodox world, isn't this the image that's presented to us by decisions made by the chief rabbinate of the state of Israel? Kolach says, in our family, my father, whose name is known to many for the very religious stripes of his best-selling book, and you've probably known his book, you probably see it, you probably have his books on your shelves. He's written many non-judgmental books on Judaism. I think it's the Jewish Book of Why. I'm sure many of you have it or have seen it. It's the same Kolach. This rabbi, after everything he's done in the Jewish world, was uninvited from taking part in a wedding ceremony of his niece, at the last moment because he was a conservative rabbi and the chief rabbinate deemed him insufficiently Jewish. If a practicing Jew expects others to be tolerant of his religious customs, which are not adhered to by the majority of Jews, he cannot refuse to eat in a friend's home because it's not kosher while routinely eating a dairy sandwich in a non-kosher coffee shop. And I know many people like that. The argument here is that if the word Orthodox were to be purged from the lexicon and everybody stood tall beside his own persona, we would have a far more cohesive Judaism. And that is why when I asked if I'm Orthodox, I respond that I am observant, which allows for more differences without a need to specify them. And when they prospect over intrusively for details, I paraphrase in Hebrew, because most of the people know Hebrew, so I paraphrase in Hebrew from the words of the Havdalah prayer that we say at the end of every Shabbat. We say, Ani mavdil bein kodesh l'chol. I differentiate between the sacred Shabbat and the secular work week. And that usually, for people who understand, that usually quietens them down. And that is how we should all respond. We try our best. We try to be more observant. We try to do what we understand to be God's will. Nobody can know what God's will really is. We do our best the way we can with the appropriate rabbinic guidance, I hope. We try to be one rung higher on the proverbial stairway to heaven. And nobody is a hypocrite who tries to do just what I said. One is only a hypocrite if they judge others for not living up to a set of ideals or behavior that they themselves don't strive to achieve either. Remember, nobody has a monopoly on holiness. Nobody has a monopoly on God, and nobody knows what it is that God really wants from us. And so as we enter into Rosh Hashanah 5783, our thoughts turn towards teshuvah and repentance in the upcoming day of judgment. Remember, when you talk about judgment, you're not here to judge others. You're just here to judge yourself and worry about yourself. And if you feel that somehow you are falling short, remember the words of Kolach, Ani mavdil bein kodesh l'chol. I differentiate between the sacred Shabbat and the secular work week. In other words, I know that I am a Jew and I'm proud of being a Jew. I know that I am an observant Jew. And I do things each day, each week, and during the course of my life that reminds me and others what I am. And I am proud to be judged by anybody based on those criteria. Judaism is not a religion of hermits. It's about being connected. And when life has its ups and downs, the Jewish community can support you. But it's not fair to expect that support without being there to offer it to others. Celebrate life cycle events. Do so with your community. Come to Shaare to help keep the doors open, not just with money, but in person. And doing so will help make our community even bigger and better, more inclusive, and more responsive to the needs of all its members. The larger our community, the more diverse our community, the stronger our community becomes. There are only 2 conservative shuls left in Montreal. We need to work together in all facets of daily community life. Fighting separately for the same goals does not make sense. Look around. Today on Rosh Hashanah, next week on Yom Kippur, we predominantly wear white. White. Even our talesim are white. Why? Many reasons are given. But one is that we want to all be the same as we stand before God. Nobody's better than anybody else. Nobody's more Jewish than anybody else. Nobody's less Jewish than anybody else. But we know that talesim come in many different colors. Black, blue, gray, pink, flowers, non-flowers. Some even have techilet. Some even have a thread of blue on the tzitzit. But it's important to note that the Torah, as we recite in the third paragraph of the Shema, refers to the tzitzit, al kanfei vigdeihem ledorotam, on the four corners of your garments. How does it refer to it? It refers to as oto. Oto is a sign in the singular. It's not in the plural, it's in singular. Tzitzit is singular because the fact that there are 4 of them on our talitot, and there are 8 strings in each. Why? To impress upon us the fact that we are united. We are one. And we come together from Arba Kanfot Haaretz, from the 4 corners of the globe and 4 corners of the world. We come together today from all backgrounds to be like the tzitzit, to be as one, to blend together as Jews, to draw strength from each other and to give strength to each other. And to do so under Kanfei HaShekhinah, under God's sheltering presence. And so my prayer for you is, may this year, where we do, indeed, where we cherish and celebrate our diversity and differences, but understand that deep down we are all the same. United in our commitment to God, united in our commitment to Torah, and united in our need to be there for our community. And let us join together to continue to foster that sense of achdut, that sense of togetherness. And may we all be happy, healthy, safe, and prosperous in the future. Shana tova tikatevu v'techatemu. May we all be written and sealed in the book of life. Amen.